Before we start the show, I wanted to take a quick moment to say a few things. I didn't grow up needing a father. I had one, a real one, the kind who showed up, who taught me how to stand tall even when the world tried to knock me down. And now, on Father's Day, I think about what it means to carry that legacy forward. To raise a son of my own with my husband by my side. Two fathers, fully present, fully proud. Jacob doesn't just have two dads. He has two men who love him like the world begins and ends in his smile. I think about the other fathers I've met, men who are building families in new ways, who fight every day to be seen, to be valued, to be celebrated. Father's Day is for all of us, but for me, it's always for the man who raised me first, the one who showed me how to be a father, and more so, the father that I am now. That is Fathernetics. This is our story. This is Father's Day. Welcome to Fathernetics, Fatherhood Unfiltered. I'm Jamil. Welcome to the podcast.
You could never find somebody do it like me. I'ma turn it all the way up, cause it kamikaze. Go ahead and try.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Fathernetics. Today, we continue with our gems of guests that we've had over the past couple of weeks. Today, we have my father. I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we can get into some specifics on fatherhood.
All right. It is indeed an honor to be here today. My name is Esteban Heraldo Meyers Gaskin, and I use all those names because I salute and respect the elders in my life. My father was very, very, and still is influential in my life, and I have done my very best to put that foot forward in influencing my sons, Jamil, my first son, Jamil Abdul Ali, and my second son, Abbas Karim Meyers.
Oh, I didn't know I had an Abdul in there.
Well, I that's me. Nobody else can say that but me. Nobody else can say that but me. Your mom can say it, and that's it. I take a lot of privileges because I change the narrative.
Okay, fair enough. So before we get into the first question that's in my head just based on that intro, what do you do in your professional life?
I am a child welfare professional. I've been in this field for 35 years now, and I've always worked with children and families. That came from my mother, who was a teacher, and then a all-around community person taught the girls in her church through a department of the church that she termed the Girls Friendly Society. And she had a lot of influence with the girls in the church. My dad was a police guard, what you call up here a jailer. I don't know how you term that, but was a part of the police department. So I had those two influences in my life that led me to work with the same population, and that is families, people, children. Help them to get out of the wrongs that may have been thrown onto them by people out there who are perpetrators, taking advantage. I don't like when somebody's being taken advantage of, so that's where I am.
So it's a good segue. One of the questions that I have, so I have a few questions, but one of the questions that I have is tied to origins, if you will, of fatherhood. For me, certainly for yourself, obviously, grandpa in my life, he's the only grandfather that I've had access to. Grandpa on my mother's side passed away before I was able to know him, but your dad has been a father figure in my life as well since I was born, always around. Obviously, we spent a lot of time in the same city in Panama. He was omnipresent along with grandma, yourself, and mom, from walking to school, from our birthday parties till all of the milestones that we've been able to accomplish leading up to 10 years of age and certainly beyond. And I say 10 years because that's when we moved to the United States, 10 years when I was 10 years old. So what would you consider as your biggest influence from a father perspective from your dad's side that kind of helped shape who you are today?
Very easy. He was always there, and my thing with him always being there was, even when he wasn't physically present, he was always in my head because he had ideologies about what we were seeing through our time in the old canal zone that he didn't necessarily conform to. Again, he changed the narrative. As a police guard, he had all the rights as a police officer, and he would tell us things like, if you were stopped, you relax, go along with what's being done, and when you get to the police station, you call me. If there's somebody who's a friend of yours who gets into trouble, you call me. I have 3 examples of that right off the top that I could tell you about, but I'm not going to digress. I'm going to stay with the topic because I can. But and I was very, very confident in that. I always remembered and acted upon the word that my dad gave me because he was Superman as far as I'm concerned. He was a police officer. He was a boxer. He was an athlete. He ran track at one point in his life. And he knew a lot of people. And whenever I saw other people, I was referred to as Little Chris. I didn't understand that then. I understand it fully now. And
No, your dad's name was
my
Crispin.
dad's name is Crispin. He's still present as far as I'm concerned. And he influenced a lot of people. Whenever I saw people older or younger, they would always talk about dad being the person that helped them or directed them or mentored them or did something to help them some way, form, or fashion. And that continues today. So
Quite the pillar of the community is how I've always seen him. He was always at events, always, either being honored or presenting some sort of speech or a part of the group that was showcased or some sort of honoree of that function, and maybe that was just a result of us being invited to those type of events. But that's usually how I saw him, and those events occurred fairly frequently. On grandma's side, it's the same. I mean, she's 95 today, and she's getting the same type of accolades, and I see a lot of that mirrored right from grandpa, grandma down to you and mom, and a lot of their ability to be public speakers and engage with people and be loved by the masses and be remembered as such a positive figure. We have a lot of adults today who are not necessarily admired in such a way. I talk about on this podcast about mentorship and about how some of us choose to be mentors and how some of us are mentors regardless of whether we chose to be or not. It's about who you're around, who you're impacting. For me and Nicholas, our mentorship comes in based on the individuals we interact with because of Jacob. So his friends, we are mentoring indirectly, right? It's not something we set out to do, but because they're in our homes and we hang out with them, there's a mentorship that happens there. There's an extra layer because of the LGBTQ nature of the parenthood for Jacob, right? 2 dads. We're helping to shape the perspective on what 2 dads looks like, opposed to what society says 2 dads could look like. So from a fatherhood perspective, certainly on Fathernetics, our goal is to build a community that has an opportunity to have conversations around what does fatherhood look like for you? Where did it come from? Did you learn from your father, or did you pick up a lot of what fatherhood could look like from your mother, being that, there was a fatherhood component to her mother side? Did you get it from an uncle, a mentor, another male figure in your life? So I think a lot of those self experiences help to add to the quilted nature of fatherhood. Is not one size fits all. It comes from all the sources that you may not have anticipated in the past.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that we always have to understand is wherever you are, whenever you are there, it is a moment to learn. And we should hold on to that moment. That was most certainly the very first and the most significant father influence for me. But also got some nudges and some assistance and some ideas from other people. As you are in school, of course, you have some teachers who are males who stay in your mind. I went to the Paraíso Elementary School. Mr. John Beckles was very influential in my life. He was my 6th grade teacher, and he pushed me to step up to the plate and learn about the woolen sax recorder. If you know what that is a tape recorder, actual tape with the reels on it. I would be the one to go out there and assist the other teachers in how to put it together and get their films going for the class that they needed to have.
The film machines with the 2 big reels?
The 2 big reels, yes. So on those things, if you find any of them, hold on to it. I'm sure they're very...
movie theaters.
Yes.
That's the only place you really see those.
Well, there you go. So that was one thing. High school, I also had that. Mr. Curvin, Mr. Williams, Mr. Hoyt, there were many males in my life that as you went through, they'll give you nuggets and you listen to it. But what I did is I took a step further. I would go a little further by checking what they said with that. A good example is Mr. Earl Graves Jr. He was my music teacher. He was the first one that put us together. We went to many places to play music. And when he put that high school band together and we went into Panama and we marched for the first time, the Canal Zone Schools March in Panama, it had a tremendous effect. It made me feel really good. So I checked with Dad and I said, Dad, we're going into Panama March. He said, really? Oh man, that's really good. What instrument are you playing? As a matter of fact, when I started playing the trumpet, Dad bought me a trumpet, and Dad further went to some of the guys who played in some of the bands in Panama. There was a movement in Panama of bands, and it was really nice during the 70s and the 60s and what have you. And one guy who played with the Exciters, Ramon, and one other guy who played with another group, we used to call him Poke Head. These guys were trumpet players, and these guys had some influence on me just by playing the trumpet. And Dad went to one of them guys and said, hey, my son's going to play the trumpet. What do you suggest I purchase for him as an instrument? And when my dad brought that trumpet home, that was a big, big deal. So those are the kind of things that stay with me, that cause for me to change the narrative whenever I spoke to you and Abbas and all the other little boys that were raising up with you all. Because they had to see that a dad wasn't somebody in the street who would just tell you, do this, do that, and that's it, and step back. Mm-hmm. My father was involved in every aspect of my life, learning to swim, learning to count, learning the codes of his police calls, 10-4 and all that stuff. Yes.
He taught us those too for some reason.
Yes, he did all that. I was driving from the age of 9. I sat on his lap and I would stare and he would drive. And after that, I just drive all the other cars. And Dad had a multiplicity of cars there at the house. One, because he had cousins and my uncles that would park the car because it was safe to park the car on the Canal Zone. So Dad would have 3-4 cars parked up there, and he would say to me, if you need to go somewhere, let me know. I'll give you one of these keys. But you got to put gas back in the car. You got to be safe. That was it. It wasn't, no, I can't trust you. So you see, from very early, he changed the narrative. I know he taught you guys to drive too. And I'm aware of that now, but back then, my dad didn't say anything to me. He just stepped up and did it. And I'm very appreciative.
I don't know that he taught me how to do it. Maybe it was Johada. He taught the driver, but no, I don't recall being behind the wheel
with my dad. I don't know who taught you to drive. I did. Well, I put you behind the wheel a couple of times. You taught me to drive.
Yes, Mom taught me to drive manual.
The stick. Okay.
Yes.
My father taught your mother to drive the manual.
There you
So
go.
you see, he was influential not only with me, but also with mom. Also with, I mean, he spread the wealth of knowledge, the confidence, and again, he changed the narrative because we weren't supposed to be driving at 9. Johada
So
wasn't
what do you think a
supposed to
lot of
be.
that comes from? Because we have exposure and knowledge of families, generational, right, where their mindset may not be as open as others, and as a result, they pass that closed-minded nature to their kids, and we end up today in a world where if you don't do it this way, then you are either shunned or looked at a certain way. From your family's perspective, do you have context of why your father was more non-traditional?
I could go so many different directions to answer that. But what I'm going to say is he was the youngest of, I believe, 12. And, well, not the youngest, second to last in that group of 12. And he saw his brothers and sisters do things a certain way. And I don't think he really agreed or was in sync with it. So he started to change some things. He was the first, but certainly not the last to be a member of the police force. My uncle Garfield was canal protection guard, which my father became after leaving the police force. So they did things together. They lived in the canal zone together. That was kind of a special deal. If you worked for the canal zone while in the Republic of Panama, you made decent wages to live in Panama. And so they were in, and the canal zone used to call it privileged roles, a term that I abhor today. But they did things differently from Jump Street. And when they found out a little bit more of what was going on in the U.S. at that time and how it applied or how it was disjointed when the filtered version actually got to Panama or the Canal Zone, they rebelled against it. And this is how they did it. They changed the narratives amongst their children. My cousins, Uncle Garfield's children, same ideology also. And of course, my other uncles, I wasn't around them that much, but my Uncle Garfield I can tell you about. Of course, your grandfather, my dad, I can tell you about most definitely, and many others. And we saw people of all walks of life. My dad being a jailer, he knew numerous people who were incarcerated. I had been dealing with that, going on the range and with my dad because he was a range master and he had several leadership positions in addition to leadership within the community. So I was exposed to that. I was always the little kid in the picture in the background or something like that. What I can say to you is I was so much involved with him on his job in that manner that I every year took a picture whenever he would go to the range for the annual shooting range competition, of which he was very outstanding in doing because he won like 4 or 5 years straight. He became a range master after that. So every year I would be on the range and I'll take a picture, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth, and so on. So that told me something. Every time I went out there, he was the one in charge. He was the one setting up. He was the one with the big trophies. And that made me understand that my dad did things that other people could not do. And my dad was teaching me things that other people weren't necessarily interested in doing. And whenever we went to places, dad was the MC. Our dad was the one watching over the security. Our dad was the one at the parish hall, for those of you who know what I'm referring to. Whenever there's a large dance, dad would be there as the security or the parental influence at the dance so that folks wouldn't get out of hand. And everybody respected that. All they needed to hear was, Mr. Mayor's coming, and they would straighten up and fly right. He was also the person who kept people straight at the movie theater, along with Mr. Maloney and my own aunt, Auntie Tina Brathwaite. And, they did those kind of things. They were involved in almost every aspect in the community. Dad didn't do much with the civic council. There were other people involved in that. I mean, he couldn't be involved in everything, but
Right.
he did his portion, and it was very much positive influence on me and on my brother, my older brother Chris. So that is what stays with me today, and I've taken that and I've grown it into what we have today.
When we talk about generational exposure and things that we're learning from, the fathers that have come from us before, I know that between myself, my brother, and my sister, we do fairly well at public speaking. Probably now, listening to you, stemming from grandpa and grandma's time in their public speaking realm, certainly from what you and mom do. I know that all three of us, your kids, take pride in being able to turn it on when we need to, right? If we need to get in front of a crowd, we can definitely do so and do so successfully. And I think that many may take that for granted and not really connect the dots and say that this is something that you're getting from your parents, your fathers, as a means to teach you how to be a better individual. Communication is key to success at almost every levels. So I guess from that perspective, communication, I know that in my early 20s is where I first came out to you and mom. And, that was the start of your journey to better understand more about what that meant at the time, what some may have said in the past, and certainly that journey to where you are today. So what if you were talking to someone, a parent, right, going through just now discovering that their child is LGBTQ, what are those nuggets of gold that you would say, hey, it's okay to feel this way, right? To visit this mind space, but this is not where you live. This is where you need to graduate from. And now for a brief break. This is Elysium, a novel about legacy, identity, and an unexpected love that changes everything. Eli is a smart, guarded, and grieving individual. He thinks he's on vacation, but when he meets Rafa, an island local with a sharp wit and a quiet strength, something shifts. What begins as a simple chemistry becomes something deeper, more dangerous, and impossible to ignore. In a world hiding more than it reveals, their connection becomes both a lifeline and a risk. Elysium blends near-future mystery with an archingly real love story, a slow burning that explores grief, identity, and the way love finds us in the wreckage. Available now on Amazon, search for Elysium by Jamil Mayers, or visit JamilMayersPublishing.com for signed copies and an exclusive extra. For the journey on Instagram, follow us at JMayersPublishing. And now back to the show.
Good, and that's I love that, because on my job right now, and I told you I'm a child welfare professional / administrator, and one of the things that we do is we have many meetings informally where we get together with coworkers who are experts in this particular area, dealing with children and families and what have you. And the LGBTQI plus community has always been on our forefront. Why? Because of so many different things that you see, the different wrongs that have been done to members of this community. And it began because there are certain things that have been placed in our minds as we were born, growing up, coming through as members of our communities, and being of West Indian background, primarily with Jamaican influence. And my parents and their parents came from Barbados and St. Lucia and Martinique and all these different places in the Caribbean. And there's a big false notion out there that if you are LGBTQI or if you're gay, that there's something wrong with you, that you need to be abhorred, you need to be treated differently in a negative way, you needed to be ousted, you needed not to be respected. And these are things that I learned growing up. So when I found out otherwise, and I found out many years before you, Jamil, told me, all right, Dad, this is what my life is all about. I had cousins who were gay, Ralston was gay, and I knew he was gay. My father told me he was gay. My other cousins told me he was gay, and I was like, all right. And that never changed anything. As a matter of fact, Ralston is the guy, my cousin, who taught me about a pair of gray shoes and a pair of green shoes and how that matches with. He used to talk to me and those stuff. He came to the house every payday. That was
What is the shoe
14
color?
days.
What are you talking about with the shoe color?
Well, if you understand, back then, nobody steered away from the normal traditional wears. You wore a black shoe or you wore a brown shoe.
Mm-hmm.
That was the norm. If you step outside the norm, then you get side blinded by people who come at you and say, "What's wrong with you? Is there something wrong with you? Are you a punk?" like they used to call it back then. So you see, even
So
from
there's more of a flamboyant flair to wear any other color?
it was flamboyant. However, it was my accepting of who he was and taking it for my use, because I didn't see it as something that was an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever approached me with, well, you must be this or you must be that, because of so many different reasons, I would say. Because one of the reasons might be because I was Crispin's son. One of the other reasons must be because I had that confidence in myself, and it was based on so many different things. We knew everybody. We stayed involved with everybody, and we were pretty active. When I say we, I mean my dad in his community of adults, as well as me in my community of high schoolers or middle schoolers or junior high schoolers, what we used to call it, or elementary schoolers.
So, with the shoe, just to kind of close this off, your cousin was introducing more of a fashion opportunity for you. It wasn't that he was trying to make some sort of a distinction in breaking from the norm. It was just more of, hey, green is okay.
That's part of it too, but he was also trying to make a distinction from the norm.
Okay.
He was gay. Everybody knew that. And whenever they would see him, they would have something to say. We did not, his relatives, we did not see it as something that was rare. Whatever he did or wherever he went or however he conducted himself, that was his prerogative. We respected that, but we never treated him as an outcast. I had many other cousins that, Ferdy Bruton, my cousin, and his brother Nando Bruton, they were all gay. No issue. Why? The question is, why should there, or why not accept them? Because when you look at who they were, the most giving person, the most involved person, the most respectable person, that's who we were looking at. Okay? So
It's kind of funny that society doesn't, it sees one side of that, right? Because what you said is usually most of what you see in the gay world, it's the gay person is by default, perhaps because they are not getting that, they tend to exude it more. The love, the acceptance, the hey, embrace you kind of characteristics that we all say we should have. But by the nature that they identify as gay, it's now we're not seeing that part. We're only seeing the gay part. And now we're trying to shun that for whatever reason. And earlier when I was talking about the shoes, I was thinking in my head about, fingernail polish. We have a lot of gay influencers that wear fingernail polish, all the bright colors and stuff like that. But now we're also starting to see, or at least remember, the rock genre was very big on painting their fingernails black and blue, and they still are, right? And these are the people, the Rolling Stones and the 9 Inch Nails. They all painted their fingers. But when a gay person does it, then it's like, ooh, why are you doing? So it's the juxtaposition of those two things that continue to be prevalent in our world today.
And one of the things that I find with, and you spoke about nails, so I'm going to go that route. Back in the days, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, the Marcus Garvey movement was well spoken about. Red, black, and green are the colors that he introduced as those which represented his movement. And what he did was really grand. I mean, on a huge scale. Marcus Mosiah Garvey is one of the black men of Jamaican ancestry. Well, no, he was Jamaican. He was born in Jamaica, who shook the government of the United States to the extent that when he bought his Black Star Line ships, 3 of them, that would transport supplies and utensils, whatever it is, from Jamaica or the West Indies, anywhere into the United States and back and forth, the U.S. government got on him. Now, I say all that to say this. I showed my allegiance to that movement by painting my pinky red, black, and green. I had a group of guys who thought the same way that I thought back then, that did the same thing. And at one point at school, we were kind of deemed as a gang, but a gang had back then the definition of being violent and being unlawful and all that. We weren't. We were all honor roll students. We were all respectful. And we came from the homes where there was no one in there that was either in jail or incarcerated or in trouble or anything like that. So they didn't bother us. So again, it is the narrative that has been given to us and forced into our minds by deceptive ways and means. Subliminally always works. They talk to you on the TV, the radio, and now with all the social media apps and what have you that are around, they feed you with certain ideas that you wake up one day and you say, oh, this get into my mind. Well, if you hear it daily in and out, it's going to come out somewhere. And that's what's happening now. And the means that they used back in the day that I just now mentioned, they still have their effect. There are a number of people my age, a little younger, and some that are much older than I am, that are still ascribing to the idea that if you say you're gay, something is wrong with you, as if it has something to do with influencing your skills, your sets, your education, your who you are as a person and how you interact with others, that kind of thing. One example that is used all the time is if there is and I use it sometimes in the classes that I do, if there's a doctor who can heal you for what you need, there's another doctor that cannot. And it so happens that the doctor that can heal you is a member of the LGBTQIA community, but the other doctor that does not have the skill, is not part of the LGBTQI community. Who would you rather doing the surgery? So you see, the skill set, the mindset, all those things have nothing to do with interacting with people, with children, with communities, etc. That narrative has been put in there to segregate and separate people, to cause a divide and conquer. How do you divide a people? You start first with the nuclear family. And if you can get that in a father, especially in a father's head, that, hey, don't stand by your son because he's gay and you need to just throw him out of the house. Or if it's a woman, oh, hey, don't stand by your daughter, get her out of the house. And, it's the same thing they used to do when young ladies would become pregnant at an early age. Oh, she got to go. You send her here and you separate the family, you break up the family.
Or postmortem depression,
there you go.
Which has recently been, understood to be a real thing. What they used to do to those ladies,
yes,
in the 40s and 50s,
yes,
to fix that was permanent, right? Those lobotomies that they used to do, thinking that was, this comes up because Nick and I talk about this all the time. And we see some of the movies where some of those activities took place, and I think a lot of people go, "Wow, that's a horror movie." Like if that ever, well, it did happen,
and more.
And
my
more.
goodness, a whole lot more.
The dominance that goes along with false information, and in the era that we are in now, where misinformation is prevalent, you can get it at your fingertips just as much as good information, but you can't tell the difference, right? So going back to my original question, which was more around, as someone who's gone through this before, having to share, your perspective on your journey,
what would I say?
What would be the nuggets of information that you would share to say, yeah, you should be going through that process, but
Well,
perhaps this is the end goal that you should be aspiring to.
and I've actually done that, as a matter of fact. The first one, this is your blood. This is your responsibility. This is a person that you've loved, and because somebody else tells you that they should not be admitted into the other level of your life, your heart, your being, your soul, you're going to listen to the other person. That is ludicrous. That's my first thing that I would say to a stranger. Yeah. Yes. That's the first thing that I would say. And in my interactions with other people, like I said, other professionals, what have you, we sit down and we talk on the job especially. I let them also know that they are a vital part of who that person now has become. Okay. So if your child comes to you and say they're gay and you just drop the ball and say, well, you need to get out, then how have you been preparing yourself all these years just for yourself? So that means you're some type of narcissistic personality that you only care about you. Mm-hmm. So why did you have a family? When you had a family, and number 3, when you had a family, did you tell God, well, you know what? If you don't do it like this, I don't want it. Who are you to talk to the most mightiest in that manner? Mm-hmm. So when you reject that which you have been blessed with, that soul, because that's who we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. That's what you should be seeing when you see the physical manifestation of God. If you can understand that, then your life is as worthless as the one that you think is not worthless that is in front of you. So that is, in essence, that which needs to be understood first. And that's just to begin with 3. You start getting into details now about depression and people not knowing that you can't just stand up and make a decision about somebody else's life because other people listen to you. Not everybody has a podcast. Not everybody can speak on a podcast, but many people listen. And when they can dissect or contrast or compare, then they fail to do their research. So a lot of people just look at the first thing on the internet or the first thing on YouTube and they go with it. And the misinformation, just like you said, that is out there is massive.
And we know the way that the internet works now, right?
Yes.
With the algorithm, you click on the one thing that you're listening to, and all of a sudden that's all you're getting.
And you don't even have to click on it anymore. You just have that cell phone in your house, and it's on, and it hears everything.
Now, one of the things that I've heard from stories of kids that are coming out, adults that are coming out, is their parents take some time, right? Which I think is natural to go, did I see this? Did I notice it? Where did I go wrong? Is usually right. And I think that talks to the narcissism that you had brought up earlier. Is it really about them going wrong or them missing an opportunity to be more aware that was something that was happening? My answer to that is, what is the intent, right? Had you known 10 years ago, what would you have done? Would it have been your goal to steer someone to try to avoid that? Or would you be in the same position you are today where you need to decide whether you're going to support or not?
Well, pretty much more. I would be willing to support. Why? Because I went to...
well, not you specifically.
No, but I'm talking about me specifically because it has to be specific. I know me. So I'm not going to make a mistake there. Although, I could, but for the most part, I will not. I went to kindergarten through 9th grade with 2 people that I know that stood out, that were gay. Never ever push anything negative in their face about that. As a matter of fact, whenever we needed something that they had an expertise in, that's who we would go to. I've been involved in my martial arts for quite some time, and even then I had many students, even today, who are a part of the LGBTQI community. And what I have learned and continue to learn from them is how much they're interested in a being rather than a personality that a person might want to display because it's just a shadow. Knowing the real person stems from whether or not you believe they're one way or another. If you really want to know them, that's what you should get into. And that is what I continue to learn over and over every day, all the time.
During my last podcast, I was talking just very briefly about how the first election of Donald Trump has caused some families to separate, and how some people don't understand that. Regardless of your political beliefs, you should never push your family aside, because we should find, and they're absolutely correct, right? For me, whether you're Democratic or Republican, not relevant. We can have conversations, right? We have different thoughts, processes. We can meet in the middle. You know, your Republicans have valuable points and they're trying to pull in a direction that makes sense. Democrats have the same thing. We're never absolutely right in our corners. But when you believe in an individual like Donald Trump, that's different, because now you have an individual that believes that me as a person in the LGBTQ community should not exist. So now you're voting against me personally, not against what I think should happen or my thought process, or I believe this would help, or, you know, if we did this, maybe I shouldn't. That's a different conversation. But now when you are voting against what's going to impact me and my child, my family, that's different. And whether you're family or not, if you're family, you shouldn't be voting against me. If you're family.
Whenever people have shared meaning of the definition of family, they act accordingly. Mm-hmm. If they have a different meaning of that word, then it still comes out in their action. I do expect for people to share differences, because an individual is an individual. And if everybody thought and had ideas that were exactly the same, there would be a problem. So because I expect differences, I will hear from people.
Or maybe we wouldn't know what the problem was.
Well, maybe we will know what the problem is. But whenever it comes to something like this, and being more direct to the issue, 47 is doing what he knows. He exemplifies the fatherhood that his father taught him.
Exactly.
Being from that basic Nazi regime in Germany.
And he lives in a bubble. So as opposed to like you, myself, mom, your dad, mm-hmm. being able to say, I don't want that entire thing. I may split it in half and do half and half and switch it up. And it evolves into something different. Correct. I think Donald Trump, as a father, and his father before him, is a key conversation to Fathernetics, because that's on the other side of what we understand to be progressive. So last question here, brief answer. Do you think that this dynamic between Trump, Elon, Marco Rubio, and most people that follow him kind of sits in the vein of fatherhood? Yes.
Why? Because it has influence on the way he sees the world. Reason why 47 is going along with Muskrat is because his father, both their fathers, had the same mentality. They don't believe that anybody else other than the Caucasians should be the ones in power, or should be the ones to dictate what happens where, when, and how. Matter of fact, they have a hand in the first thing to get their changes made is to have money. They're pooling their monies together. I'm sure you've heard of the conglomerate BlackRock, and they do a lot of things that other people cannot do, because not everybody has that kind of money. There is no other conglomerate, to my knowledge, that has pooled so many billions of dollars together to control the economy to the extent where they can put somebody in place like they did with J.D. Vance, and put other people in place like they did with Muskrat, and put more people in place like, and I can't remember this gentleman's name now, I just read some more information about him. Put those people in place to affect the United States government to the extent that they have.
All right. Well said. All right, Dad, I appreciate you spending this time with us today. As we go into other topics and other subjects in more details, especially in politics, stuff like that, we'll invite you back for more chats. But until then, I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to this podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.
I love you, son.
Love you too. Thanks, Dad.
1, 2, 3. You can never find somebody do it like me. I'ma turn it all the way up, cause it kamikaze. Go ahead and try, baby, you are gonna see that you'll never ever find somebody do it like